Hello everyone, Ben here and welcome back to the channel. Today we have got a video all about boss fights in Dungeons & Dragons and how you can make your encounters a little bit more interesting for your players and for yourself as a DM. With monsters being one of my favourite things about Dungeons & Dragons, it has understandably taken a little bit of a front seat when it comes to my planning. I like to think about how the adversaries to my players plan and think. Are they organised? Do they have intricate plans? Perhaps they've been working on some bizarre, never-before-seen magic or technology. Or maybe they act more instinctually, defending themselves and their nests, no matter the cost. It's always best to remember that monsters and enemies are multifaceted. They don't just have one single track mind. They're always thinking of ways to bring you down, just as you're trying to do the same with them. And when delving into some Dungeons & Dragons, or insert other TTRPG here, there's nothing more intriguing or fascinating or fun to me than an engaging, challenging boss fight. Whether the player or the DM, these encounters have often taken weeks, months, or even sometimes years to build up to, and a well-planned, executed boss fight can leave your players feeling accomplished, with a major milestone goal ticked off of their list. These battles can also be equally satisfying for the DM, with those months of planning leading to a satisfactory, thematic and plot-defining moment. Do the players achieve victory and move forward in their collective story? Or does the BBEG arise victorious? Battered, bruised, bloodied, but otherwise looking to take their nefarious plots and schemes to the next level? Either way, these fights are incredibly satisfactory and, done well, can be one of the high points of your campaign. And the theory behind these fights is all well and good, but how do you actually craft a well-planned, thought-out, engaging boss battle that the players are going to remember and keep in the forefront of their minds? Well, I'm glad you asked. Personally, I like to approach boss encounters in 3 main steps. Step 1, theming. The key to any big story-defining moment, in my opinion, is theming, and just keeping the players enraptured and encapsulated by what's going on around them. One of the main things to remember here is that while as the DM you want things to go in a certain direction, your players are the ones that have built up to this moment. They've got different expectations going on in their head. As you've probably learned to expect as a DM, never anticipate what the player is going to do. Just always remember that it is the players that are experiencing this master-crafted tale. And in plot-defining moments such as a big BBEG encounter, it can be all too easy as the DM to over-prioritize your villain, who you have no doubt spent countless hours, weeks and months planning out to be a charismatic master of suspense and danger. While you should absolutely expect your BBEG to, have a monologue, have your fun with it as the DM, don't overdo it and let the players get involved as well. Now, I totally understand if the players kind of start trying to interrupt speeches and all this kind of thing. That's not cool either. So if you're a player, let the DM have their moment. They've been building up to this for months, just like you have. Also, as a quick side note to this, if you have a DMPC or a character that's been trailing along with the party, try not to let them have any plot-defining moments here. That can really steal away from the player's thunder and is just totally not advised. And again, that was a slight side tangent to theming, but the whole experience of building up to this fight all counts towards this. What has happened before? What has the BBEG done that has slighted your players in the past? Bring things up that have happened along the way as you enter this encounter. The BBEG might have slighted one of the players previously. It may come up in their backstory somewhere. This is where you can really incorporate all of that prior storytelling into one plot-defining moment that your players are going to latch onto and remember. Give them as much reason to hate the BBEG as possible before this point, and it will make this encounter all the sweeter. This moves us into step 2, boss battle stages. When played as raw, boss battles can feel a little linear, with the players just kind of continuously chipping away at a boss until their health goes from whatever it starts at down to 0. Yeah, sure, the boss is going to be throwing spells, they've got some actions that they're going to do, and the odd legendary action here and there is going to come in clutch. But other than that, your players are kind of expecting that experience, and it's not going to be anything too much outside the ordinary. This is where boss battle stages come in. Picture this. Your players have just hacked and slashed away at the boss, making solid progress and bringing it low, when all of a sudden the huge construct that they're fighting stops moving, begins to pulsate with a glowing green light, and you can hear a kind of thrumming sound emanating from its very pores. Suddenly, the golem's metalwork begins to move, twists and turns, reforming into something completely different. You've heard tell of this, and it appears to change into what seems to be a gigantic arcane cannon.
It lifts itself from the ground with some unknown magic, propelling itself 120 feet backwards from where it once stood. As a set of massive, anchoring legs drop from below, rooting it back into the ground where it now stands. You hear again a building, low thrumming sound, rising in pitch as the green light that emanates from within this construct glows ever brighter. It takes aim at your party, and you can hear the sound intensifying as the green light grows and grows and grows. You know there are only moments left until this thing open fires, and you've previously seen what it can do. Back to initiative order. What do you do? So that's just a little example that I've thrown in there. It's an encounter that I have developed and planned, which I haven't actually run yet, but should prove rather interesting when I do. It's about a golem that the players are battling. They get it down to roughly 50% of its hit points. They won't really be expecting it. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, and it throws a whole new element of depth into that boss battle. Now, splitting a large encounter so drastically may not be for everybody, and I do understand that. However, for me, it provides a break in the combat and provides the players something different to draw their attention to. In D&D and other TTRPGs, there isn't anything as frustrating as a long, drawn-out boss fight that just starts to get tedious the longer it goes on. And this is my favourite way of breaking that up and trying to make things feel a little bit more fluid and dynamic in combat. This approach also gives you as the Dungeon Master the opportunity to create some truly unique and epic encounters. I mean, who isn't going to remember the golem that transformed into an arcane cannon mid-combat? So back to my previous point, planning these encounters and pre-planning them is going to be really handy for you, especially as it's going to enable you as a Dungeon Master to drop hints and bits and pieces here and there as the characters progress through the story. This thing may have been causing absolute chaos in one region. A hunter may have discovered the golem while out on a tour and seen the monster transform in front of his very eyes, only to go back to an uncaring town guard who don't really care for his tale and don't believe a word of it. The party could instead stumble across tracks of the golem, sparking intrigue when its tracks finally disappear right in front of a gaping, arcane-wrought hole in the side of a mountain. This will help build suspense around the encounter and will give it a huge payoff when your players finally clock on to what's happening. It also means that the second stage of this encounter isn't going to be entirely left field, and they're going to expect something to happen, but they're not going to be quite sure what, which in my opinion adds even more to the encounter. Although, it could be quite the surprise if they failed all of their investigation checks up to this point. And remember, this doesn't have to be part of a long-running, multi-arc story. You could of course just use a staged encounter in a one-shot, which again can really spice things up, especially as your players won't have had as much time to learn about the encounter beforehand. Now, if you hadn't already guessed, I get a lot of my inspiration for these kind of encounters from RPGs and MMORPGs. Nothing strikes fear into the heart of a gamer more than bringing a boss to its knees, feeling that rising sense of victory, only to be greeted by that harmonious, haunting music as the boss you've just downed rises back up in front of you, ready to go again, one final time. And we're going to jump into the final step, step number 3, setting and environment. This kind of melds hand in hand with the boss stages that we've just talked about, as well as the theming from step 1. Be it the ancient temple of a long-forgotten god, a magical alchemical laboratory, the centre of a city currently under assault, out on the open plains of a vast, biodiverse grassland, or deep underground in the sprawling depths of the Underdark. Consider how each environment is likely to affect a battle, and think of some environmental effects that could add to the encounter. Is the colossal boss likely to use the stalactites surrounding your party as weapons? Could the player characters use the same stalactites to hide from a dragon's breath weapon attack? Or is your boss or monster encased in a set of heavy, impenetrable armour or scales, making it practically immune to all physical damage? Could goading it into a pool of nearby lava help alleviate this and make things slightly easier on the party? The choice is up to you, but each extra option that you provide helps bring the sense of a living, breathing, dynamic world into your games. You don't need to go mental and add every single environmental possibility under the sun, but just consider what you could do with the surrounding environment. It genuinely can really add to the feel of a game. And remember, DMs, if the players can use the environment to their advantage, then so can you. And that is going to about round up this video. If you want to jump back to a specific part of this video to reference anything, then you should be able to do so in the timeline, for which I've added sections for your convenience. Other than that, thank you very much for joining me, and if you liked what you saw, please consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. There will be much more content to come in the future, but for now, why not check out one of my other videos, Perhaps an Astral Dreadnought or Balor creature feature is just what you need right now to inspire you to run your own multi-stage boss encounter.